What if the fairy tale that began on the streets of Beverly Hills 35 years ago is about to return? What if the love story that defined an era, a story of chance meetings, broken barriers, unforgettable chemistry, is finally ready for its second chapter? The wait is over. Julia Roberts and Richard Gere are back. Pretty Woman 2 is real, and the world is holding its breath for the comeback of Hollywood's most iconic couple. When Pretty Woman was released in 1990, no one could have predicted the cultural storm it would create. At first glance, it was just another romantic comedy in an industry overflowing with love stories. But what made it different was magic, the kind of rare, unexplainable magic that only happens once in a generation. Julia Roberts, then a rising star, stepped into the role of Vivian Ward, a woman whose laughter, warmth, and vulnerability turned her into an instant Hollywood legend. Across from her, Richard Gere embodied Edward Lewis, the cool and calculated businessman who discovered, almost against his will, that love was more powerful than money, power, or status. Audiences didn't just watch Pretty Woman, they lived it. They saw themselves in its characters. They felt the hope, the vulnerability, the humor, and the heart. From Vivian's unforgettable red dress to Edward's white limousine, from the boutique scene that redefined confidence to the rooftop finale that rewrote fairy tales, Pretty Woman gave the world a love story that was daring yet pure, glamorous yet relatable. It wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural event, and one that would continue to echo for decades. The film wasn't supposed to be a fairy tale at first. In fact, the original script was much darker, a story about struggle and survival. But under the direction of Gary Marshall, it was transformed into a warm, uplifting romance that spoke to millions. Julia Roberts even earned an Academy Award nomination for her performance, while Richard Gere found himself forever linked with one of the most beloved roles of his career. The box office success was staggering, with the movie grossing over $460 million. Worldwide, a record-breaking feat for its time. But the real success of Pretty Woman was not measured in dollars. It was measured in hearts. It was measured in the laughter and tears it inspired, in the couples who found their own love reflected on screen, and in the generations who would later discover it on VHS tapes, DVDs, and streaming platforms. Even today, nearly 3.5 decades later, the film remains timeless. Its dialogue, its music, who can forget Roy Orbison's "Oh, Pretty Woman," and its undeniable charm have cemented it as a permanent piece of Hollywood history. And so, for years, the question lingered: would there ever be a sequel? Fans speculated endlessly. Rumors circulated. But Roberts and Gere moved on to other roles, other projects, and other chapters of their lives. Hollywood studios, always hungry for sequels and remakes, surely asked, but nothing ever happened. The magic of Pretty Woman seemed untouchable, as though it belonged to a moment in time that could not be repeated, until now. In 2025, the long silent question is finally answered. Julia Roberts and Richard Gere are returning. Not in a remake, not in a reimagining, but in a true sequel, a continuation of the story that captured the hearts of millions. The wait is over, and the promise of Pretty Woman 2 is no longer just a dream whispered among fans. It is real, it is happening, and it is bringing back the laughter, the romance, the sparkle of Hollywood's golden age. This comeback is more than just a film announcement. It's a cultural moment. For those who were young when the original was released, it's a chance to relive the magic of their youth. For those discovering it today, it's proof that true love stories never die. They only grow with time. And as Roberts and Gere prepare to step into these roles once again, audiences around the world are reminded of something simple but powerful: that some fairy tales are not meant to end. The magic of Pretty Woman didn't come from castles, dragons, or fairy godmothers. It came from something much more real. Two people from completely different worlds daring to believe that love could break the rules. Vivian was a woman who had been overlooked, underestimated, and judged by society. Edward was a man who had everything money could buy, but was empty on the inside. When they collided, something extraordinary happened. That was the heart of the first story. Now, 35 years later, the question burns brighter than ever. What has become of Vivian and Edward? What does their life look like after all this time? Pretty Woman 2 dares to answer those questions, not with the glitter of the past, but with the wisdom of the present. The sequel is rumored to open not in the glow of Beverly Hills, but in a quieter, more reflective setting. Edward Lewis, once the ruthless corporate raider, is no longer chasing profits or hostile takeovers. Time has softened him, reshaped him. He is now a man reflecting on legacy rather than conquest, on meaning rather than power. Vivian, on the other hand, is no longer the woman who needed rescuing. She has grown into her own strength and advocate. A mentor, perhaps even a guiding figure for younger women. Facing the struggles she once knew too? Well, but what happens when two people who once shared a whirlwind romance must face the realities of decades lived together or apart? Will the flame that burned so brightly in their youth still spark in their later years? Or will new challenges threaten to tear apart the bond they once thought was unbreakable? Speculation around the plot suggests that Pretty Woman 2 won't just be a retelling of the same old love story. It's not about gowns and limousines this time. It's about rediscovery. It's about proving that love, true love, can survive the tests of time, disappointment, and change. The fairy tale is different now. The characters are older, wiser, and far more layered. And yet beneath it all, the heart of Pretty Woman remains the same. Hope. Fans are whispering about the possible introduction of a younger generation, daughter or son of Vivian and Edward, someone who carries the legacy of their unlikely romance. This new character may challenge them, push them, and even force them to confront what their love really meant all along. Could this younger role represent the modern voice of the story, reflecting how love, class, and power have evolved since the 90s? Imagine Vivian guiding a young woman through the very same struggles she once endured. Imagine Edward grappling with a world that no longer bows to businessmen in suits, a world where empathy and humanity mean more than numbers on a balance sheet. These are the themes that could make the sequel not just nostalgic, but powerfully relevant in today's world. And yet, no matter how the story unfolds, one thing is certain: Pretty Woman 2 will not forget its roots. It will honor the iconic moments that made the original unforgettable. The echoes of the red dress, the memory of the shopping scene, the rooftop rescue, these elements live forever in the hearts of fans. The sequel may nod to them, but it will not repeat them. Instead, it will expand them, showing us that fairy tales don't end when the credits roll. They simply evolve, just like the people who live them. The story of Pretty Woman 2 is not about perfection. It's about imperfection. It's about the cracks, the scars, and the lessons that come with living a full life. And in those imperfections, it finds beauty. Because the truth is, audiences no longer want fairy tales where everything is flawless. They want stories that reflect their own lives, the struggles, the compromises, and the enduring belief that love can still win in the end. So while the details of the script remain closely guarded, the essence is clear. Pretty Woman 2 is not just another sequel. It's a continuation of a journey we all began back in 1990. It's about love that refuses to die, about people who refuse to be defined by the past, and about the courage it takes to embrace the future together. And as the curtain rises once again on Vivian Ward and Edward Lewis, one truth remains unshaken. The world is ready for their story. And this time, the stakes are higher, the emotions deeper, and the promise even greater. Asterisk, every great story begins long before the cameras start rolling. For Pretty Woman 2, the journey back to the big screen has been almost as dramatic as the film itself. For decades, Hollywood insiders whispered about the possibility of a sequel. Studios pitched ideas. Writers drafted scripts. Yet Julia Roberts and Richard Gere always said no. Why? Because they understood something rare in the film industry. You don't tamper with magic unless you're certain you can capture it again. That patience, that restraint is what makes this comeback so extraordinary. Roberts and Gere weren't interested in cashing in on nostalgia. They weren't looking for another paycheck. They were waiting for the right story. one that honored the legacy of Pretty Woman while offering something new. For years, the answer never came. And then it did. The breakthrough happened quietly. A script began to circulate in Hollywood that didn't just revisit Vivian and Edward's past, it reimagined their future. It was a story that embraced their age, their growth, their scars, and their triumphs. For Julia Roberts, it was the first time she felt that Vivian could return without being reduced to a caricature of her younger self. For Richard Gere, it was an opportunity to portray Edward not as the slick businessman of the 90s, but as a man facing the weight of time, change, and reflection. Convincing both stars was no small task. They had built legendary careers since Pretty Woman, and they had nothing left to prove. Julia Roberts became one of the most respected actresses in Hollywood, winning an Academy Award for Erin Brockovich and building a filmography filled with complex roles. Richard Gere, too, continued to shine, taking on both romantic and dramatic roles, earning global admiration for his work and humanitarian efforts. For them to come back together, the script had to be more than good, had to be worthy. And then there's the shadow of Gary Marshall, the beloved director of the original film. Marshall passed away in 2016, leaving behind a legacy of warmth, humor, and humanity in cinema. His absence could have been the reason to never attempt a sequel, but instead, it became the reason to do it right. Those close to the project say the creative team has worked tirelessly to honor his vision while bringing in a new director who understands how to balance heart and spectacle. The sequel, in many ways, is a tribute to Marshall himself, the man who turned a dark script into a modern fairy tale and gave the world a love story for the ages. Behind the scenes, the comeback is also a reflection of Hollywood's shifting landscape. Audiences today are more demanding. They want stories that reflect the real complexities of life, not just polished fantasy. They want nostalgia, yes, but only when it feels authentic. And this is why Pretty Woman 2 exists now, in 2025, and not earlier. The timing feels right. The world has changed. And Vivian and Edward's story has changed with it. Reuniting Roberts and Gere after more than 3 decades has been described as lightning in a bottle. During early table reads, crew members reported a palpable electricity in the room, the same kind of spark that turned the original into a phenomenon. Their chemistry, remarkably, has not dimmed. If anything, it has deepened with age, bringing new layers of tenderness and realism to their characters. The production itself has been treated with secrecy, but hints have slipped through. Luxurious Los Angeles sets, built to mirror the elegance of the original film. Wardrobe departments carefully recreating iconic looks while designing new ones. And a soundtrack that blends the nostalgia of Roy Orbison's classic with fresh, modern music. Every detail is being crafted not just to replicate the past, but to create something timeless. And perhaps the most powerful element behind the scenes is the weight of expectation. Millions of fans worldwide are watching, waiting, and hoping. The pressure is enormous. But for Roberts and Gere, that pressure is not a burden. It's a gift. It proves that their story still matters, that their characters still live in the hearts of audiences across generations. This comeback is not about 2 stars returning to familiar roles. It's about 2 artists, now at the height of their wisdom, stepping back into a story that shaped their careers and changed their lives. It's about honoring the past, embracing the present, and giving fans something they never thought they'd see, Vivian and Edward. Together again, behind the glamour, behind the Hollywood lights. There's something deeper happening. Pretty Woman 2 is not just a movie being made, it's history being written. Asterisk, why does this story matter now? Why has the announcement of Pretty Woman 2 sparked excitement, not just in Hollywood, but across the world? The answer lies not only in the film itself, but in what it represents. This sequel is more than just a movie. It's a bridge across time, across generations, and across the lives of millions who have carried Vivian and Edward in their hearts for over 3 decades, when the first Pretty Woman premiered in 1990. Audiences were captivated by its optimism. It was a story that said love could overcome barriers, that kindness mattered more than wealth, and that even the unlikeliest of romances could bloom into something unforgettable. For people watching it then, the film became a symbol of hope. It whispered to dreamers that love doesn't always follow the rules, and that sometimes the most unexpected people can change our lives forever. Now, in 2025, the sequel arrives in a world that looks very different. Audiences today face new challenges, faster lives, digital distractions, uncertainty about the future, and yet the hunger for love stories, for human connection, has never been stronger. That is why Pretty Woman 2 matters. It's not just offering nostalgia. It's offering reassurance. It's reminding us that even after decades, even after mistakes, heartbreaks, and the weight of time, love can still find its way back. For those who saw the original in theaters, the sequel is like opening a time capsule. It takes them back to a younger version of themselves, sitting in a dark cinema. Hearing Julia Roberts' laughter echo for the first time, for new generations, it's an introduction to something their parents or even grandparents adored. Suddenly, families have a story to share across ages. A teenager can sit with their mother or father and watch Vivian and Edward's journey, feeling the same magic that once swept audiences away 5 years ago. The cultural weight of this comeback cannot be underestimated. Julia Roberts and Richard Gere are not just actors, they are icons. The reunion symbolizes more than two characters returning. It represents resilience, legacy, and the idea that some things truly last. In an industry often criticized for chasing trends and forgetting history, Pretty Woman 2 stands as proof that timeless stories never lose their shine, but there's something even deeper at play. This sequel isn't just about Vivian and Edward, it's about us. It asks us to reflect on our own journeys. Who were we when we first watched Pretty Woman? Who are we now? Have we held on to our dreams? Have we allowed love to guide us? Or have we let life harden us like Edward once was? Watching Vivian and Edward face their future together allows us to look into our own lives and wonder, what would we do differently if given a second chance at love? That is the secret power of Pretty Woman 2. It's not just entertainment, it's a mirror. A mirror that reflects our hopes, our regrets, our triumphs, and our possibilities. It tells us that fairy tales don't end when the credits roll, that the most beautiful chapters are sometimes written later in life, and perhaps that is why the world has responded so strongly. Because deep down, we all want to believe that love doesn't expire, that it can survive time, distance, and change, that it can grow with us, stumble with us, and rise with us again. When audiences step into theaters in 2025, they won't just be watching Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. They'll be watching themselves, older, wiser, but still holding on to the belief that love is worth fighting for. They'll be reminded that even after 35 years, some stories are not over. Some stories are still being written. And as the lights dim, the music begins. Vivian and Edward reappear on screen. One truth will echo louder than all others. The magic of Pretty Woman never really left us. It was simply waiting. Waiting for the right time to return.